Oh boy, welcome back, folks. Today we've got a good one. It's a short one, but it's a good one. And just to preface this one, I just want to say that I think Candace Owens' reaction in this video is exactly how more people need to start responding to questions like this or to people like this, because the second you start engaging with people on their level when it comes to the trans, non-binary issues and all that stuff, you inevitably give up your own personal power, because now you're entering the world of delusion and nonsense, which is really where a lot of this stuff kind of stems from. It is the fact that we're giving in to these conversations and we're giving them merit and value by actually trying to argue with it, right? Because it's so pointless, it's so nonsense. Let them live in their little nonsense world. And in this example, this is exactly what Candace Owen does. Just watch.
As a non-binary person, what do you have to tell me about my identity? Because I know for a fact I'm not confused.
Okay, next question. Great statement.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, okay, that's cool. All right, sounds good. Like if you know exactly what you are, then rock on. Nothing else to talk about then, because at that point it's like you really can't have a conversation with someone who doesn't want to hear anything you have to say, right? So actually responding to that type of question is totally pointless on your side, right? Because you know they're not going to take anything you say to heart. You know they're not going to try and understand your perspective or your point of view, right? And it's interesting, especially in this setting where it's like the forum is basically set up to ask Candace Owen questions, and the individual is asking a personal question about how she perceives her identity to be, and expecting some sort of like haha gotcha moment for Candace Owens, right? Where she's like, it's bizarre.
That's a statement. That's a statement. Okay, you know your identity. You're not confused. Congratulations, sweetheart.
It's like the sad turnaround. And of course, like the overall attire, I mean, like this is what I say is right. Like judging people by their looks and things is not typically, you're not guaranteed to be accurate, but you can definitely infer some things based off of someone's mannerisms, how they're behaving, how they're talking to people, what they're wearing, and the music they listen to, things like that. You can kind of infer things about that person, right? Because that's you getting to know them, right? You getting to know someone is understanding things about them. And so when I see people like this who talk in such a confident way about knowing who they are and being like, this is what I am, while simultaneously wearing, what looks to be satanic wear, and usually are people who are not religious or don't have a faith at all. And just in general are people who are pretty hateful towards others, right? Especially to people who disagree with them. And I think this is a big issue, is that hate isn't going to solve any of the world's problems. It's really not. So what you're left with is trying to have a conversation. But if the other side you're trying to talk to hates you and sees you as some sort of hateful person, right, then on their side, what they see from their perspective is that their hate is now justified, right? Their hate for you is justified, and they don't have to have a conversation with you at all, because ultimately to them, it's not going to breed anything, because you're not going to see them for who they think they are, which in quotations, right, is a they, them, or a non-binary person, right? And even if you were to ask questions, right, just merely asking questions to a person like this is going to set them off, right? We know this. We know this as a fact. Like, we've seen plenty of videos and plenty of clips on Twitter or on YouTube or wherever that just show that people on the left, whenever you misgender someone, or if you use the incorrect pronoun, or if you dead name them, or whatever the nonsense thing is for that day that they want to be offended by, I mean, that's all it is, right? It's them trying to be a victim, them trying to make you feel, I don't know, morally corrupt, right? It's there's multiple sides to this whole thing. And I think one of the sides is moral superiority, making yourself feel like you know more, or your morals are somehow more intact than the other sides or the other person, and so therefore you don't have to listen to a single thing they say. And I think that's kind of like that's a very basic way of describing it. I mean, obviously there's more to that, but I think that kind of sums it up. In the overarching scheme of things, most people on the left fall into that category. I'm not going to say all, but most people, especially the people like this who think they're non-binary, and when you ask them what that means, there's never a clear, defined answer to what that means, right? Like, and I think this is one of the issues, is that, people like this who don't get called out or are not laughed at the way Candace Owens is kind of laughing, like, haha, okay, good job, like, good for you. Now what? What do you want? right? Like more of that response, I think, to people like this is what's needed right now in order to get people like this maybe a little bit more back in the realm of reality, which is where I would hope most people would want to live, is in reality and not in some fantasy land. But I mean, there's plenty of people who want to live on VR for the rest of their life, and they'll be happy with that. So yeah, it's crazy. I know this was a short clip, and I know I spent most of the time talking about it, but it's stuff like this that keeps popping up, and it's always a different person. It's always in a different location, and it's always someone with some reason for why they need to demand everyone else around them behave a certain way, and there's no rules for them whatsoever. And it's crazy. In a world where we have so much access to technology to do as much research as we have ever been able to do, right? You can actually basically visit a library via your computer or via your cell phone, right? You can rent out books on your phone. There's plenty of ways to educate yourself. And it's interesting that with all that access to information and knowledge, people are still so delusional as to think that they can demand things of other people who have just the same rights as they do. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is who wants control, who's trying to control people, where is this coming from, why is it here, and who's ultimately making the decisions. It stems from a lot of different places. I don't think there's one single place it's really coming from, but I do think that there are certain areas in our society where it's coming out of more often or more frequently or with more potency than in other areas. And college is a perfect example of that. So yeah, we see a lot of college students coming out thinking they're non-binary and then asking to define that. They can't. So, to each their own, but also don't be ridiculous. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.